There's a principle in architecture called tensile strength. It's the measure of a material's resistance to being pulled apart, the absolute limit of its integrity. We test steel until it screams and shears. We test concrete until it crumbles. We test composites to understand their breaking point. For 10 years of my life, I believed the foundation of my marriage to Mark was pure, unyielding granite, a substance so solid, so fundamentally sound, I thought its tensile strength was infinite. I was wrong. The scary thing about granite is that when it fails, it doesn't bend. It shatters. From the outside, we weren't just a couple. We were a concept, a living embodiment of a glossy magazine spread. The kind of life people pin on their vision boards. Our house, a minimalist masterpiece of cedar, steel, and glass I had helped design myself, was perched on the crest of Queen Anne Hill, a silent testament to our success. I remember one specific summer evening, just last year. We were hosting a dinner party on the deck. The air was warm and smelled of salt from the sea and the rosemary I had planted in terracotta pots. Friends were laughing, the clinking of wine glasses a kind of music. Mark was at the grill, effortlessly charming, telling a story that had everyone captivated. He caught my eye from across the deck, winked, and raised his glass to me. In that moment, we were a perfect team, a flawless design. Every morning, I'd drink my coffee and watch the ferries glide like stoic white ghosts across the slate-gray waters of the Puget Sound. Every evening, the city lights would glitter below us, a carpet of captured stars. It was a life built and curated with the same obsessive precision I put into my blueprints. I'm Clara. I design buildings meant to outlast the people who build them. My work is about honesty, the honesty of a material expressing its nature, the honesty of a line that is both beautiful and functional. I create libraries where future generations will learn, museums that will hold our history. I understand the critical importance of a flawless foundation, the mathematical poetry of load-bearing walls. I thought I had applied those same principles to my life with Mark. 10 years, a decade of shared dreams, inside jokes whispered in the dark, and the comfortable, predictable rhythm of two lives woven so tightly together, I no longer knew where I ended, and he began. I thought I knew the blueprint of us. I thought I had accounted for every possible stress, every external load. I had no idea the demolition was already happening from the inside out, engineered by the one person I trusted to hold up the beams. Our story, the real story of our ruin, didn't begin with a thunderous collapse. It was far more insidious than that. It began with a change in the acoustics of our home, a silence where there used to be easy laughter, a whisper where there had been declarations of love. At first, I explained it away with the practiced ease of a wife who wanted to believe. Mark was a senior sales director at a cutthroat tech firm. His world was a relentless churn of quarterly targets, aggressive competitors, and high-pressure negotiations. So when the late nights at his downtown office started stretching past midnight, I would simply leave his favorite spicy rigatoni in the warming drawer, a silent gesture of support, a small act of love against the encroaching darkness. When his phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, became a third appendage, its screen always angled away from me and passcode locked the second I entered a room, I told myself it was the paranoia of a major client deal. I remember asking to use it once to look up a restaurant reservation because my own phone had died. He flinched, physically snatching it from the counter. "Sorry, babe, battery's almost dead," he'd said, even as the screen glowed at a healthy 87%. He'd then spent 5 minutes pretending to look for a charger, the lie hanging thick and awkward in the air between us. He was protecting proprietary information. That's what he told me. That's what I chose to believe. Because the alternative was unthinkable. I was a good wife. I was a supportive partner. I was, in the end, an exquisitely dedicated fool, polishing the brass on the Titanic as the water rose around my ankles. The first tremor, the one that sent a hairline fracture through my granite illusion, happened on a Tuesday. It was a typically drizzly Seattle afternoon. I was setting up a new tablet, a gift from Mark for my birthday. The irony is not lost on me. And I was syncing our shared family calendar. This calendar was the central nervous system of our life. It held everything. Dr. Miller, dentist, 10 a.m. Dinner with my parents at Canlis, Saturday, 8 p.m. Our 10-year anniversary trip to the San Juan Islands, a weekend I had been dreaming about for months. As the entries populated the screen, my eyes snagged on something new. A recurring event, twice a week, locked and private, visible to me only as a title. It was labeled Project Nightingale. That evening, as we stood side by side at the kitchen island, the scent of lemon and garlic in the air from the roast chicken we'd just finished, I broached the subject. I made sure my voice was a watercolor wash of casual curiosity. Hey, I saw a Project Nightingale on the calendar when I was setting up my new tablet. Sounds mysterious. Big secret client? Mark didn't even look up from the wine glass he was meticulously drying. His focus on the crystal was absolute, a performance of domesticity. Oh, that, he said, his voice a flat, dismissive monotone. It's a confidential new client acquisition. Major play for Q4. Can't say more, babe. You know how it is. NDA. An NDA. A non-disclosure agreement. The perfect, unimpeachable shield for any lie he wanted to tell. Wow, sounds intense, I pushed gently. What industry are they in? Aerospace? Biotech? He hesitated for a fraction of a second, but recovered smoothly. Fintech, disruptive platform, super competitive space. He was so good. The lie slid out, fully formed and plausible. I nodded, turning back to the sink, the warm water running over my hands, but the water couldn't wash away the cold knot of dread in my stomach. I wanted to believe him. The desperation to believe him was a physical ache in my chest. But my mind, the architect's mind, was already at work. It was dissecting the data, searching for anomalies, for inconsistencies in the design. And the pattern of Project Nightingale was all wrong. The meetings were always at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays and 1 p.m. on Fridays. Never at his office tower downtown. Never at a client's headquarters. The location field in the calendar was always a vague, infuriating TBD, to be determined. Who holds a critical, confidential business meeting at a location that is perpetually undetermined? The lie was good, but the design was flawed. For 2 agonizing weeks, I waged a war against myself. The rational architect in me compiled the troubling data points, while the hopeful wife desperately tried to explain them away. He's working hard for us. You need to trust him. Don't be that wife. But the whispers in our house were growing louder, more insistent. The space between us and our California king bed, once a cozy landscape for lazy Sunday mornings, now felt like a vast, icy canyon. Some nights, I'd lie awake, feeling the chasm between our bodies, a tangible representation of the emotional distance that had opened up between us. He started coming home smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. It was a faint, cloyingly sweet scent of jasmine and sandalwood, something overtly floral and completely unlike my own subtle citrus scents. The first time I noticed it on the collar of his expensive dress shirt while doing laundry, I held the fabric to my nose and felt a jolt of pure ice in my veins. I confronted him later, holding the shirt up like a piece of evidence in a trial. He just laughed it off, a smooth, practiced sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, that. You know Janice in marketing wears a gallon of that stuff. She gave me a hug in a crowded elevator today celebrating the preliminary numbers. You're imagining things, babe. He was so good at it. So calm, so dismissive, that he made me feel like the crazy one, the hysterical wife seeing ghosts where there were none. He started deleting his call history obsessively. He'd take hushed phone calls in the garage, claiming the reception was better there. He'd flinch if I walked into his home office unexpectedly, quickly minimizing a window on his laptop. Small things. Tiny, insidious betrayals of our shared intimacy. Each one was another hairline fracture, spiderwebbing across the surface of our foundation, and I just knew, that soon the whole thing was going to crumble under the weight of it all. The breaking point arrived on a Friday. Mark was supposedly at his 1 p.m. Project Nightingale meeting. I was sitting at my drafting table in our home office, the Seattle rain tapping a melancholic rhythm against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was staring at the blueprints for a new city library, a beautiful, complex structure of learning and community. But my mind wasn't on egress routes or structural loads. It was miles away, lost in a fog of suspicion and dread, replaying every lie, every flimsy excuse. On an impulse born of pure desperation, I swiveled in my chair, opened my laptop, and navigated to our shared credit card's website. My login was automatic. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My hands were shaking as I clicked on View Recent Activity. And there it was. Time stamped at 1:30 p.m. that very day. A charge that made the air leave my lungs in a single, painful gasp. It wasn't from a downtown conference center. It wasn't from a corporate office park. It was from a place called the Willow Creek Inn. I knew the name. Everyone knew it. It was a ridiculously romantic, obscenely expensive boutique hotel nestled in the woods out past Bellevue, famous for its secluded, ivy-covered cabins, each with its own private entrance and outdoor hot tub. It was the kind of place you took someone you didn't want the world to see you with. My trembling finger clicked on the hotel's website link in the charge detail. The page loaded, showing a photo gallery of laughing, happy couples, cabins with fireplaces, and champagne flutes by a bubbling hot tub. I imagined him there, with someone else, in one of those cabins. The thought was a physical blow. Then I went back to the statement. I clicked on the charge detail. The description wasn't for a meeting room rental or corporate catering. It was for a lover's lunch special for two, followed by a 3-hour cabin day use. My breath hitched. The screen dissolved into a watery, unfocused blur. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were a roar, a deafening, soul-crushing, world-ending roar that consumed everything. Project Nightingale wasn't a client. Project Nightingale was a person, a woman, and my husband, Mark, the man whose hand I had held when my father passed away, the man who I had nursed through a brutal flu, the man who I had given every ounce of my love and trust to for a decade, was cheating on me. I sat there, paralyzed in the chilling quiet of our perfect, silent house, for what could have been minutes or hours. Time ceased to have meaning. The initial shock felt like being plunged into Arctic water, a full-body paralysis that stole my breath. Then came the grief, a tidal wave of it, so profound and absolute that I felt like I was physically drowning in it. I walked through the house, touching the objects of our life together. Our wedding photo on the mantelpiece, a lie. The silly refrigerator magnets from our trip to Italy, a lie. The faint scar above his eyebrow from when we'd tried to assemble an IKEA bookshelf together, and I'd dropped a wrench. A story I used to tell with a laugh, now just another chapter in a book of fiction. Every "I love you," every shared glance, every promise was poison. I thought about screaming until my throat was raw. I thought about taking a hammer and smashing every single thing we owned. I pictured myself shattering the large glass vase on the console table, the one he'd bought me for our 5th anniversary, and watching the shards skitter across the polished concrete floor. But as the hours passed and the sun began to set, casting long, mournful shadows across the room, the grief began to recede. The raging waters of sorrow subsided, and on the barren shore they left behind, something else began to take root. It was something cold, something hard, something with the sharp, clean edge of tempered steel. It was rage, a pure, unadulterated, crystalline fury that burned away my tears and clarified my thoughts. I looked at our wedding photo again, at his smiling, handsome face, and I felt nothing but contempt. The grief had been a fire that burned away all the softness, leaving only the hard, unshakable bedrock of anger. I wasn't going to be the weeping, hysterical wife. I wasn't going to throw his clothes on the lawn. I wasn't going to confront him, tears streaming down my face, and give him the perverse satisfaction of seeing me utterly broken. He did not deserve my tears. He did not deserve a dramatic scene. No, I am an architect. I don't just weep when a structure is condemned. I study the failure points. I analyze the faulty materials. I draw up a new plan. I design a controlled demolition. And then I build something stronger, something better, in its place. That night, when he walked through the door at 9 p.m., his face flushed, his eyes a little too bright. I didn't say a word about the hotel, the lunch, the cabin. I rose from the couch, walked over to him, and greeted him with a kiss on the cheek. The faint, sweet smell of jasmine was on his skin. I smiled. "Tough day, honey?" He lied, so effortlessly it was an art form. He smiled, a picture of weary professionalism. "You have no idea. Grueling session, but I think we're making progress." He looked into my eyes, a liar looking into the eyes of the person who knew the truth. And in that moment, as I stared into the face of the stranger wearing my husband's face, I made a silent, solemn vow. He had torn down our life. I was going to tear down his, meticulously, systematically, and with a foundation of my very own. I called my new blueprint Project Demolition. The first phase was reconnaissance, information gathering. I had to know everything. I had to know who. I had to understand the entire scope of his betrayal before I could even begin to plan my response. For the next month, I became a phantom in my own marriage, a method actor playing the role of a lifetime, the loving, completely unsuspecting wife. I initiated intimacy, an act that took every ounce of my self-control, turning my own body into a tool of espionage. I suggested we plan a weekend getaway, just to see the panic flicker in his eyes. I listened with feigned interest as he talked about his work. It was the hardest performance of my life, a daily exercise in suppressing the inferno of rage and pain that was burning inside me. Every moment he was otherwise occupied was a window of opportunity. When he was in the shower, its loud fan masking all other sounds, I was on his phone. When he was deep asleep, a faint snore escaping his lips, I was on my tablet, logged into his laptop via a remote desktop app I'd installed. Gaining access was shockingly easy. His password for everything was still the date we met, 0824. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it all was breathtaking. He was cheating on me while using a password that was supposed to symbolize our beginning. My best friend, Jen, became my war counsel. She was a brilliant, ferocious litigation lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and a loyalty that was absolute. I showed up at her downtown apartment one night, unannounced, clutching a bottle of expensive whiskey. I didn't even make it past her foyer before I collapsed into tears, the story pouring out of me in a torrent of gasps and sobs. She didn't offer platitudes or useless reassurances. She listened, her expression growing harder and colder with every detail I revealed. She poured 2 large glasses of whiskey, handed one to me, and said, "Okay, the mourning period is over. Now, we go to war. But we do it my way, cold, calculated, and we leave him with nothing." She was my anchor, the one who kept me focused when the emotional undertow threatened to pull me under. We'd spend hours in her apartment, surrounded by her law books and legal pads, a strange headquarters for our burgeoning conspiracy. "Don't get emotional, Clara," she'd repeat like a mantra, her voice firm but kind. "Emotion creates mistakes. We need to be surgical, get evidence, get leverage. We're not just blowing this up. We're going to control the detonation down to the last second." She explained the legalities, the importance of admissible evidence, the way to inflict maximum financial and reputational damage while protecting myself. The evidence, once I started looking, was an avalanche. Texts filled with sickeningly sweet pet names. My Nightingale, he called her, and explicit, stomach-turning details of their encounters. A hidden folder on his cloud drive, password protected, but easily guessed. Her name, Isabella, containing dozens of photos of them. Her face, when it finally loaded on my screen, was a physical punch to the gut. Isabella Rossi, my protégée. The bright, ambitious young architect I had personally hired 2 years ago. The one I had mentored, championed, and pushed for at our firm, seeing a reflection of my own younger, hungry self in her eyes. I had invited her to our home for dinner. Mark had charmed her, of course, as he charmed everyone. I had given her advice on negotiating her salary. I had shared my industry contacts. I had helped her climb the ladder. And this is how she repaid me. By climbing into my husband's bed, by dismantling my life from the inside. The betrayal was so deep, so multi-layered, it nearly shattered the icy resolve I had worked so hard to build. It wasn't just a husband's infidelity. It was a colleague's treachery, a mentee's disloyalty. It was an indictment of my own judgment. I scrolled through the photos, each one a fresh stab of pain. Them laughing at a winery in Woodinville. Them holding hands, walking through Pike Place Market. Then I saw it. A selfie of her, smiling coquettishly at the camera, and around her neck was a delicate, antique gold necklace. A hummingbird, its wings outstretched, sculpted with intricate detail. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that necklace. It was a gift from my grandmother before she passed away. It had gone missing from my jewelry box 2 months ago. I remembered the panic, the frantic searching. I flashed back to that afternoon, to Mark's face, a perfect mask of concern, helping me turn the bedroom upside down looking for it, saying, "Don't worry, babe, it'll turn up. It has to be here somewhere." He hadn't just cheated on me. He had stood by and watched me grieve a lost family heirloom that he himself had stolen to adorn his mistress. That was the moment. That was the precise second the last embers of my sorrow were extinguished, replaced by a cold, clean, diamond-hard fury. From that point on, there was no hesitation. There was only the plan. With Jen's guidance, I escalated my surveillance. I purchased a sophisticated keylogger online, and, one night while he was fast asleep, my heart pounding so hard I was sure it would wake him, I installed it on his laptop. The 5 minutes it took felt like 5 hours. Another night, I placed a tiny voice-activated listening device, disguised as a USB power adapter, in his home office. It felt dirty, invasive, like I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, a shadowy figure from a spy novel. But my guilt was a flickering candle against the raging inferno of his betrayal. Every recorded phone call where he whispered promises to her, every logged keystroke as he searched for apartments for rent in South Lake Union, was another brick in the wall of his downfall. I learned the true scope of Project Nightingale. It wasn't just a sordid affair, it was a fully fledged parallel life. He had co-signed the lease on her expensive apartment. He was paying her car note. I found receipts for designer clothes, for spa days, for weekend trips he told me were business conferences. He was promising her the world, telling her he was just waiting for the right time to leave me, after his big commission came through, so the divorce wouldn't be so messy. He was living an entire second life, and he was funding it with money from our joint account, money I had earned designing buildings while he was busy designing our destruction. The second phase of Project Demolition was the strategic targeting of their pillars of stability, their careers and their finances. They had built their affair on a bedrock of his money and her ambition. I would destroy them both. Mark was on the precipice of the crowning achievement of his career. He was the lead on a massive exclusive deal with Ethelred Tech, a titan in the aerospace industry. The contract was worth tens of millions to his company, and his personal commission, the one he was waiting for before he left me, was projected to be over $500,000. He talked about it constantly, his eyes gleaming with a manic, greedy pride. This deal was his magnum opus, his ticket to the next level. It became my primary target. For Isabella, her greatest strength was also her greatest weakness, her boundless, reckless ambition. She had recently been made the lead designer on the most high-profile project our firm had won in years, the Skyview Tower, a new 60-story luxury residential skyscraper that was set to redefine the Seattle skyline. She was getting all the credit, all the press. An article in an architectural journal had called her a visionary. I knew with the certainty of a master craftswoman that she had cut corners to achieve that vision. Ambitious people always mistake speed for skill. One day at the office, she cornered me by the coffee machine, gloating. "Isn't it amazing, Clara? The Skyview is going to be my legacy." I smiled at her, a tight, cold smile. "Legacy is a heavy thing, Isabella. Make sure your foundations are solid." The double meaning was lost on her. My nights became my workday. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. While Mark snored beside me, I was in my home office, the glow of my monitors my only companion, studying. I became an expert on Mark's life. I combed through every line of code in his company's client management software. I read every email, every memo, every expense report related to the Ethelred deal. I cross-referenced flight manifests with his hotel receipts, creating an airtight timeline that proved he was taking Isabella on these business trips, billing the company while conducting his affair. I compiled it all into a series of meticulously organized, encrypted digital files. It was a monument to his deceit. Then, I turned my architect's eye to the Skyview Tower. As her mentor and a senior partner, I had unrestricted access to all project files on the company's server. I would stay late at the office, long after everyone else had gone home, the silence of the large, empty firm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I spent weeks poring over her structural calculations, her material specifications, her engineering reports. And then, at 2 o'clock one morning, fueled by black coffee and pure adrenaline, I found it. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible error, buried deep within the load-bearing calculations for the upper 10 floors. She had specified a grade of reinforced steel that was subtly, but critically, insufficient for the wind shear forces at that altitude. It was a mistake born from rushing, from arrogance, from wanting to bring the project in under budget to make herself look good. It wouldn't cause the building to collapse, not immediately. But it was a ticking time bomb. It was a serious enough flaw that, if discovered by a city inspector or an independent auditor, would immediately halt the billion-dollar project, trigger a massive NTSB-level investigation, and professionally, perhaps even criminally, ruin whoever signed off on the plans. And Isabella's confident, looping signature was on the bottom of every single page. She had tried to bury the miscalculation under a mountain of superfluous data and complex jargon, but I found it. I found the fatal flaw in her masterpiece. I documented it, photographed it, created a detailed report explaining its implications, and added it to my growing arsenal. The final piece of Project Demolition was the stage, and Mark, in his infinite, breathtaking hubris, provided the perfect one. His 40th birthday was approaching, and he had decided to throw himself a massive, extravagant, black-tie party at the Columbia Tower Club, the exclusive private club on the 76th floor of the city's tallest building. It was to be a testament to his success, a night to show off to over 150 of his closest friends, his family from back east, his entire executive team, and his most important clients, including his boss, the company's CEO, and the CEO of Ethelred Tech, whom he had personally invited as the guest of honor. I, his devoted wife, was of course tasked with helping him plan it. "Make it a night to remember, babe," he'd said, kissing my forehead one evening as we went over the catering options. The casual hypocrisy of it all was still astounding. I smiled back, my expression a perfect portrait of adoration. "Oh, I will," I whispered. "I promise you, Mark. It will be a night no one will ever, ever forget." I seized control of the critical details. I designed the elegant, minimalist invitations myself. I managed the guest list and the RSVPs, ensuring every important player in his life would be there. And most importantly, I volunteered to create the traditional birthday slideshow, a heartwarming collection of photos and videos celebrating his life. He was thrilled. He handed over a hard drive containing his entire digital life, thousands of photos and videos, blissfully unaware that I was not his biographer, but his executioner. Jen and I spent 3 long nights in her apartment, the floor littered with takeout containers and empty coffee cups, editing the video. We timed it to the second. We chose the music with cinematic precision. It was a work of art, a 10-minute masterpiece of character assassination. The week before the party was a blur of quiet, calculated, and terrifying action. My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. I was moving through my days on pure adrenaline and a sense of righteous, biblical fury. I was calm. I was focused. I was an instrument of justice. On Monday morning, an anonymous, professionally bound dossier, printed on high-quality linen paper, was delivered by a bonded courier to the personal office of the head of the Washington State Licensing Board for Architects. It contained my detailed 15-page report on the structural integrity issues and material specification failures of the Skyview Tower project. It was complete with copies of Isabella's flawed calculations, her signed blueprints, and evidence of her attempts to conceal the error. It suggested a clear, willful breach of professional ethics and a blatant disregard for public safety. An immediate, top-down investigation was not just likely, it was guaranteed. The first pillar was set to fall. On Wednesday morning, another anonymous package, this one a sleek black digital tablet, was delivered by the same bonded courier to the personal office of the CEO of Ethelred Tech. The tablet was preloaded with a single encrypted presentation file. A separate email, sent from a secure, untraceable Proton mail address, provided the password, Nightingale. The presentation was a corporate nightmare, crafted with Jen's legal genius. It laid out, with chilling, irrefutable clarity, the timeline of Mark's affair with Isabella. It included geotagged photos of them together on his business trips. It included damning transcripts of their recorded conversations about him leaving me after his commission was paid. And then, the masterstroke. It framed the entire affair as a massive corporate security and espionage risk. Jen's narrative was brilliant. It highlighted that Isabella worked as a lead architect for a firm, my firm, that designed headquarters and research facilities for Ethelred's direct competitors. It posed the simple, devastating question. What confidential corporate strategies, what proprietary information, might a man so willing to betray his wife have shared with his mistress during their many hours alone? It didn't make a direct accusation. It just planted the poisonous seed of doubt. In the high-stakes world of aerospace technology and multi-million-dollar deals, the mere suggestion of such a risk is a kill shot. The $500,000 commission that Mark was counting on had just vanished into thin air. I didn't hear the explosions. Not yet. They were silent, controlled detonations happening in sterile boardrooms and behind the closed doors of executive offices. All I knew was that the charges had been set. The timers were ticking. All that was left was the public spectacle, the final, glorious detonation. The night of the party arrived. The air was crisp and cold. I wore a crimson dress, custom-made, a color of love, of passion, of rage. Its fabric felt like armor against my skin. I stood by Mark's side at the entrance to the Columbia Tower Club, a gracious hostess, a smiling, proud wife. He was incandescent, on top of the world, basking in the glow of his own perceived success. He had no idea he was a dead man walking. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me close, and whispered in my ear, his breath warm and smelling of expensive scotch. "See, babe? We've got it all." I looked up at him and smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in months, because I knew he was right. I did have it all the evidence, all the power. "We certainly do," I replied. Isabella was there, of course, shimmering in a silver dress that was cut a little too low. She had the breathtaking audacity to approach me near the bar, to wrap me in a fake hug, and tell me how stunning I looked, how lucky Mark was to have me. She was wearing a new diamond tennis bracelet, probably bought with my money, but she wasn't wearing my grandmother's necklace. I wondered if Mark had told her to leave it at home, just in case I noticed. The thought sent another jolt of pure ice through my veins and strengthened my resolve. The speeches began after the main course. His father, flown in from Boston, gave a rambling, affectionate toast. His boss, a man named David, lauded his professional achievements. They all toasted Mark, the golden boy, the conquering hero, the master of the universe. Then Mark himself took the microphone, his face flushed with triumph and champagne. He thanked everyone, his family, his friends, his team. He saved his most glowing, most saccharine words for me. "And finally," he said, his eyes finding mine across the crowded, opulent room, "I have to thank my beautiful, my brilliant, my supportive, and my endlessly patient wife, Clara. None of this, absolutely none of it, would be possible without her. She is my rock. She is my foundation." The room erupted in applause. I felt 150 pairs of eyes on me. I kept the serene, beatific smile plastered on my face. It was almost time. I could feel the countdown in my blood. "And now," the hired MC announced cheerfully, "to continue the celebration, Clara has prepared a special video presentation to celebrate Mark's 40 incredible years." The lights in the grand ballroom dimmed. A wave of anticipatory murmurs rippled through the crowd. The 3 giant screens behind the stage flickered to life. The soft, gentle piano music I had so carefully selected began to play. The slideshow started innocently, perfectly. Adorable baby pictures of Mark. Awkward teenage photos from his high school yearbook. Our wedding photos, which sent a fresh, sharp pang of what could have been through my heart. Photos of our travels to Greece, to Japan. Photos of us with our friends, laughing. Our life. Mark was standing near the stage, laughing along, a fresh glass of champagne in his hand. The audience was captivated, smiling, nostalgic. Then, at the 5-minute mark, the music subtly shifted. The simple piano melody was slowly joined by a low, mournful cello. The tempo slowed, becoming more somber, more menacing. A full-screen picture flashed on the screen. The elegant, ivy-covered entrance of the Willow Creek Inn. A few people in the audience looked confused. I saw Mark's smile falter, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Next, a crystal-clear photo of the Lover's Lunch Special for 2 menu, which I'd screenshotted from the inn's website. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my hands, resting on the table, were perfectly still. Then, a beautiful, professional headshot of Isabella, laughing, a photo I'd pulled from our firm's website. The screen split, showing her picture on one side and the dictionary definition of the word protégée on the other. A person who is guided and supported by an older and more experienced or influential person. The room was utterly silent now. The cheerful murmuring had ceased. You could have heard a pin drop 76 floors below. I watched Mark. He had gone deathly pale. His champagne glass was frozen halfway to his lips. He was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly agape, a look of dawning, abject horror on his face. He glanced desperately toward the tech booth at the back of the room, but the operator had been well instructed by me. He was not to be disturbed. The next slide was a screenshot of our shared family calendar, with every single Project Nightingale appointment highlighted in a blood-red circle. And then, the finale. the crescendo of my symphony of destruction, a rapid-fire montage of photos. Mark and Isabella kissing passionately on a hotel balcony in Miami, a photo taken from the hidden folder on his laptop. Them clinking champagne glasses in a hotel bar in Chicago. The final image was a stunningly clear, high-resolution close-up of Isabella, smiling, her head thrown back in laughter, and around her neck, gleaming under the light, was my grandmother's gold hummingbird necklace. The cello music swelled to a final, mournful note and then stopped. Beneath that damning photograph, in large, simple, elegant white text on a black screen, were the words, "Happy birthday, Mark. I hope it was worth it." The screens went black. The silence in the room was absolute, a crushing, suffocating weight of collective shock and humiliation. Slowly, deliberately, I picked up the spare microphone from our table. I stood up, my crimson dress flowing around me. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking a steady, resolute rhythm on the polished floor. I looked out at the sea of stunned, gaping faces, his boss, David's face a thundercloud, his parents looking ashen and ashamed, finally letting my eyes rest on Mark. He looked like a statue, a man turned to stone. His face was a mask of pure horror and disbelief. "He called me his foundation," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the speakers throughout the silent, cavernous room. "And he was right. A foundation's job is to bear the weight. And for the last year, I have been bearing the crushing weight of his lies, his disrespect, and his profound betrayal. With the woman," I paused, letting the silence hang in the air, "that he introduced to me as his mentee, the woman to whom he gave my grandmother's necklace." I slowly turned my gaze to Isabella. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with panic. She was frantically looking for an escape that didn't exist. "But the thing about foundations," I continued, turning my cold gaze back to my husband, "is that when they are irreparably compromised by faulty materials and dishonest design, they must be demolished." I let that sink in. This is my demolition, and it is also my new beginning. As for you, Mark, you are officially condemned. I set the microphone down gently on the stage. I turned, and without a single look back, I walked away from the stage, through the stunned crowd of our former friends and colleagues, and out of the Columbia Tower Club, leaving behind the smoking wreckage of my husband's life. The cold, clean Seattle air hit my face as the elevator doors opened in the lobby, and for the first time in a year, I took a deep, shuddering, clean breath. I wasn't grieving. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. The fallout was immediate, total, and catastrophic, just as I had planned. Jen told me later that Mark's boss and the CEO of Ethelred Tech didn't even say goodbye. They simply walked out of the party in stony silence. The following Monday, Mark's multi-million-dollar deal was officially canceled, the press release citing a sudden and total loss of confidence in the project lead's professional judgment and integrity. He was fired that same afternoon, escorted out of his building by security. His reputation in the tight-knit Seattle tech industry was not just damaged, it was annihilated. Isabella was suspended from our firm the next morning, pending the results of the state licensing board's now active investigation. Faced with irrefutable evidence of her professional misconduct and the public humiliation, she resigned before she could be fired. The billion-dollar Skyview Tower project was put on indefinite hold, sending shockwaves through the city's development community. She was a pariah. I had filed for divorce first thing that Monday morning. Jen handled everything. We had a single, brief mediation session. Mark sat across the table, looking like a ghost, hollowed out, defeated. Jen simply slid a single, 6-inch thick binder across the table. "This is the preliminary evidence, Mark," she said calmly. "We can do this the easy way, or we can do this in court, where this binder becomes public record." He capitulated on every single one of my terms. The judge awarded me the house, the majority of our assets, and significant alimony. He lost everything: the house with the view, his high-flying career, his savings. The last I heard, he had moved into a small, bleak apartment down in Tacoma, struggling to find even a junior-level sales job. Isabella disappeared completely, rumored to have moved back in with her parents somewhere in the anonymous sprawl of the Midwest. Her once promising career in architecture over before it had ever truly begun. And me? I took a year for myself. A year to heal, to rediscover the blueprint of my own soul. I sold the house in Queen Anne, the one with the beautiful view and the ugly, haunting memories. With the money, I traveled. I went to Italy and walked through the Roman Forum, staring at structures that had stood for 2,000 years, marveling at their resilience, their ability to stand proud even in ruin. I realized that even the grandest structures can fall, but their foundations, if well made, can still tell a story. I went to Japan and sat in the quiet perfection of the Ryoanji Garden in Kyoto, finding a profound peace in its deliberate, mindful composition. I learned that emptiness could be a feature, not a flaw. When I finally came back to Seattle, I didn't return to my old, large firm. I used the rest of my settlement to start my own boutique architectural practice in a sun-filled loft in Capitol Hill. I named it Resilient Design. It's small, but it's entirely mine. I specialize in historical restoration, in adaptive reuse projects. I find old, broken-down, forgotten buildings, fire-damaged warehouses, abandoned churches, and I find the beauty in what was once broken, making them strong and useful again. The poetry of it is not lost on me. Sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and I'm looking out at the lights from my new studio, I think about him. I don't feel the fire of hatred anymore. I mostly feel pity. A profound, hollow pity for a man who had so much: a loving wife, a beautiful home, a successful career, and threw it all away for something so cheap, so transient. He didn't just break our vows. He broke himself on the wheel of his own ego and deceit. My revenge wasn't just about destroying him. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. He tried to make me a tragic, pitiful footnote in the story of his life, the clueless, heartbroken wife he left behind. But I refused to play that part. I picked up the pen, and I wrote my own ending. I became the architect of my own salvation. I tore down the faulty, rotten structure of our life together and built a new one, a life with a foundation not of granite, but of steel, my own steel. And I sleep very, very well at night. Have you ever had your world turned upside down by a betrayal you never saw coming? A betrayal so deep it threatened to erase who you are? People say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I think sometimes it's a blueprint, a detailed, meticulous, and brilliantly executed plan to take back your power and reclaim your story. So I ask you, what do you do when the foundation of your life cracks? Do you try to patch it up, hoping it will hold? Or do you have the courage to tear it all down and build something stronger, something truly your own, from the rubble? Let me know your story, your thoughts, in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of starting over, don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience.